Hey there, today we're making roasted vegetable and pesto sandwiches. So let's start with the veggies that we're roasting. I've got my oven on to 375, and then I'm gonna be roasting some zucchini, some eggplant, and I know the recipe says peppers, and I thought I had peppers in the crisper, but I didn't. So I'm going to be substituting some cherry tomatoes. It kind of gives it that like acidity and that punch of color as well, but just so you know, the recipe doesn't exactly match this video, and if you like the idea of doing tomatoes, that's totally an option. And the optional thing that I'm adding is mushrooms. I've got this really nice mix of like shiitakes and oysters and creminis, and ooh, it looks like there's even a couple of slices of pine mushrooms in here. So I'm going to use my fancy mushroom mix. I like it for that meaty texture, and yeah, but you do you, whatever vegetables you love roasting. Other options are, I like to do roasted fennel, and some people pop like some slices of garlic in there, and then you can have a little roasted garlic thing too. Okay, so I'm gonna show you how I cut these, and then we'll dress them and pop them in the oven and make the pesto. So with my zucchini, it is zucchini season right now where I'm at. So this is a good size of zucchini. It's pretty thick, right? But you can imagine like this on your sandwich, you're gonna wanna have nice big slices of zucchini and of eggplant. I like to do mine in rounds, and I like to do them about 1 inch thick, so that's about the width of your thumb. And eggplant and zucchini are good friends, and they tend to cook at about the same rate, more or less. It depends on the density of your vegetable. But I'm gonna go ahead and cut my zucchini into my 1 inch rounds, using everything except the stem, and plop them onto your baking sheet. I like to do a lined baking sheet because I want less sticky mess, especially we're going to be dressing this with balsamic, and that sometimes can burn to the bottom a little bit. So I've got my zucchini all arranged on a sheet pan, my eggplant. You got a couple of choices here. This is a globe eggplant, and you can also get an Asian eggplant. Asian eggplant is also very tasty. I find that like a tiny bit spicy, which is nice. The Asian eggplant, I like to cut them on a diagonal, like that, so that I have longer, slender pieces rather than quite small, circular pieces. I'm cutting my eggplant in about 1 inch diameter, or sorry, 1 inch thickness, I should say. Arrange that on here. I'm not going to be doing anything in addition to slicing and dressing. These eggplants, some folks do like salting and brining and pressing, which is good for some recipes, but I find it just not necessary for this one. And whatever other veggies you've got, I've got some of my mushrooms. So the only thing that needs to happen here is shiitakes get their stems taken out, because shiitakes have quite tough stems. You can save those for vegetable stock. Put them to the side. If you've got creminis or button mushrooms or portobellos, you can go ahead and slice those no thicker than about 1 inch as well. You tend to either be into mushrooms or not, so I put them as optional in this recipe. And I'm gonna put all of them, why not? So I ended up layering mine just a little bit. Like I've got mushrooms that are kind of in among everything. There's gonna be a little bit of shrinkage in baking, so I'm not too worried about it. If your baking sheet is feeling a bit overcrowded, then use 2 baking sheets for this. So I'm gonna use some olive oil. I do like an inexact amount of olive oil, a nice drizzle, and some salt. This is balsamic vinegar, and I'm gonna make sure all of it has a good amount of vinegar on it, because this is really like a forward flavor in this recipe. And that's it. I'm gonna bake these guys for about 20 minutes. Now with my cherry tomatoes, if I had bell peppers, I would put them in amongst all this. With my cherry tomatoes, I'm going to just dress them with the same balsamic and olive oil, and these will only take about 5 minutes in the oven, just until they start to burst. I'm not gonna try to make tomato sauce here. So in they go. Olive oil, little balsamico, not too much. There we go. In the meantime, while that's roasting, let's make some pesto. So, ingredients for pesto, I'm not going super far from a traditional pesto here, but you can take this same recipe idea and apply it to winter veg and then make a winter pesto. So I'm going to walk you through how to do the summer version because it's summer right now, right here. And then I'll talk you through how to do winter kale. Winter kale. Of course, I let it slip. It's got kale in it. Summer version has arugula. So my summer version is, I just love basil. Honestly, I think this is a living basil, and so I'm going to try to nurture this little plant to grow more. So I'll pull the leaves off in a way that it will encourage some growth. I'm going to put a good handful of basil in here in my food processor. And sometimes I end up adding other greens than just basil. So I'll show you this version. I've got some arugula. Now arugula is peppery little guy here. Some arugula is very spicy. This one is like, it's cultivated. It's not super duper spicy. The stuff I grow in my garden for some reason is like really powerful. So add some arugula. And here's the thing. If you're doing winter pesto, then you could use kale instead of arugula. That's more a winter appropriate thing. At least where I come from, we get a lot more kale and things like that in the winter. If you can grow tender greens all year round, then great, use spinach or arugula, right? Whatever's there. Okay, so now a couple of optional additions that I like. I use hemp hearts instead of pine nuts. So either work. They just add a bit of like richness because they've got lots of healthy omega-3 fats in them. And I like to kind of put them where I can. They're also full of fiber. If you do no nuts, then it's just a runnier sauce. If you do nuts, then it's a little bit more thicker. As a substitute for parm, you could do nutritional yeast. It's a different creature entirely, but it is its own kind of cheesy, delicious thing. And then you're gonna wanna add your citrus. I got a couple of lemons here. Now lemons vary in juiciness. So I'm gonna start with one, and then if I need to add more lemon juice, I can. But you do want it to be pretty punchy because it's gonna be like the flavor compound for the whole sandwich. So you've got all the, delicious blandness of Portuguese bun or ciabatta or whatever kind of bun that you're using. You want the pesto to really permeate flavor into the whole sandwich. So lemon and salt. Yeah, you want your condiments to be a little acidic and a little salty, and then that's just perfect. And some oil. In this case, I'm using olive oil because I'm kind of vibing on those Italian vegetable flavors. You could use a more neutral oil like avocado if you want. That's it. I'm just going to pulse this, buzz it up until I get a nice creamy consistency, and then taste it and adjust if you need to add a little bit more salt or a little bit more lemon. So I pureed the pesto, and I have sinned, for I forgot to add garlic to that pesto. the heat is getting to me today. So let's add some garlic to that pesto. I don't know if that's ever happened before. I make a version of this in the early summer that is a garlic scapes pesto. So if you ever are growing garlic or you see at the farmer's market, those little curly Q kind of tails that come up from the garlic when they're sprouting, those are so tasty. They're mild and delicious. These are very strong garlic cloves. I'm adding 2 of them. I'll go back and process those and get all the flavors in there. Okay, so I have it's pretty runny right now. If you make pesto with olive oil, then it will set up in the fridge and then you can do more of a spreading. This is gonna be a little more of a drizzler. And you can go ahead and add more nuts or seeds if you want to have like a thicker one. So again, because of the heat here, it is gonna be a little on the thinner side, but also like just get right into the crux of all your sandwich flavor holes. All those little air pockets in your sandwich are going to absorb the pesto and be delicious. So while my veggies are still roasting, I've taken my tomatoes out. They started to pop in the oven. I'm going to open up my sangi. This is a really personal choice. You can toast it or not toast it. I'm going to go ahead and toast them because the oven is still on. And I might as well use the whole thing. And I have actually reserved some of the arugula leaves for adding to the sandwich, for adding a little bit of a fresh punch to the sandwich. So once I toast these up, I'll come back and show you what happens. So assembly is pretty simple. I do a pretty generous amount, a couple tablespoons of pesto. Grab a few veggies. Layer these guys on top. Some mushrooms. A couple of tomatoes tucked in there. And if this has room, I'll add some fresh greens. And close it all up.